Hi guys! So welcome to part 2 of my 5 and 5 using the Simon Says Stamp Sketched Flowers kit. We're going to get started here with the first project for the second video. I got a couple of mason jars. These ones I just had laying around. Actually, they're two completely separate ones. One has a handle and one doesn't. I'm going to take a piece of acetate, just the same kind that you use for your shaker cards, some burlap wire. It has the wire kind on it, but I don't think the wire is necessary for the edges. I think just a piece of burlap is fine. And that is cut to about the burlap is 2 1/4, and I cut the acetate to 2 inches widthwise. And then I just put it, since I don't know what size jar you would be using, you just have to measure it around your jar. And you don't want it to go completely around because we're going to tie it in the back, so that way you can take it off when you don't want to use it anymore. Say you want to change it to a different theme for a different holiday. So you want to be able to take it off. We're not going to permanently attach it to the mason jar. I'm also going to use some of the foils from the kit. Those are the Gina K Fancy foils. And I'm going to take my alcohol ink, and for this one I believe I just picked them up, but I wasn't looking when I picked it up. I was looking down. But these are all the same supplies that we've been using to play with the alcohol inks. That's the blending solution in a spray bottle. And then I'm going to use the orange alcohol ink that came in the kit, and the blue, since I didn't really use much of the blue in the first video. I'm going to use it in the second video. Just kind of blow it around, get my big old head in there. And I have to add on the acetate, because it's a non-porous surface, it's going to work pretty much the same as the Yupo paper, but I did notice that I needed to use a little bit more alcohol and ink on the acetate than I did on the Yupo paper. But I wanted something clear to put it on, and I thought, well, why not? This is supposed to be a non-porous surface, so it should work, just that's what Tim said, so that's what I did. And it worked fine. And you can see, that way you can see the burlap behind it. So I'm just going to keep blowing it around, adding a little bit more of the blending solution until I'm happy with how it looks. It doesn't need to be completely covered, but you can, because I want to be able to see the burlap behind it. And now I'm just going to take some of the foils, and I'm just going to put them on and just get some of that foil on there just to give it some sparkle. And the foil worked better on the acetate than it did on the Yupo paper. So here it is, and it's got some nice sparkle and shine to it. It doesn't look like much when you look at it right there, but once you put it on the burlap and put it on the jar, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So after I cleaned up my work surface, now I'm going to take my crocodile, and I'm just going to, using the smallest hole, if you can see at the very bottom, I'm just making 4 holes on each side, because that's where I'm going to take my needle and some embroidery thread that I had just laying in my stash, and I'm going to sew it together on the back of the jar, the mason jar. So it's kind of like lacing up your shoes, so to speak, on the back of the jar, and then that way when the season is over, you can just cut that one off and then put a winter one and change out the flowers, and you're still good to go. So all I'm going to do is just thread it through, tie a knot, if I can get it through, just to hold it in place. You don't want to tug too tight on these, or else you will go right through the acetate. So you just gently but firmly make a knot, and then you're gonna put it around your jar. This was easier on the jar without a handle, but I didn't have another jar, so I grabbed one of the ones that has a handle, so because I wanted a matching set. So you just put it around the jar, and then you're gonna take the embroidery thread and needle and go through the hole on the other side that you made, and then you're just gonna, kind of like a football, you're just gonna sew it back and forth. And then when you get to the end of the 4 holes that you made, you're just gonna tie a knot to secure it, and then just like this. And then when you're done for this season, you change it out and put a Christmas one or a winter one on there. So now that that's done, we're going to add, I wanted to put a little sentiment on it, just like this one. I want it to match. So I'm going to do another thankful for you, trim it down. This, I don't pop these up. I just put them just with some, because I'm not sure how good acetate, it will hold. So I used strong score tape on the back of the thankful for you sentiment. And then I just stick it right on the jar. And I think I used score tape. Yeah, I did. And I just put a couple pieces on there. So these projects are already, if you saw the picture in the very beginning, I already have my table and my side table all decorated with all these projects that I made, and I took pictures of it. And I'm going to be putting them up on Instagram. But these are some flowers that I got on clearance at Michael's and at the dollar store. And then I tore them all apart and put them back together using some jute in a, pleasing to my eye way. And that's the completed jars. And those are on either side of my dining room table. Now for the next thing I'm going to do, this is a card, and I'm going to be using the flowers again. And all I did was color them with the Copic paper. That's the peacock paper that came in the kit. And for this one, I wanted to make 3 panels. So I'm going to just mark on my paper 2 inches in the middle and then 1 inch on either side. And I'm just going to trim them down. And then I'm going to take the black cardstock and I'm going to trim that to be a little bit bigger than the 2-inch middle one, so it's at 2¼ inches. And then I'm going to trim down my middle panel to be 5½ inches wide, which is the same as the card base. And that's my middle panel, and that's going to get popped up. And you can see I was fiddling with it quite a bit, trying to line it up, and so I had to pull it off, and I pulled off some of the card base, but it's okay because it's going to get covered anyway. And then my gun failed me. Actually, it didn't. I ran out of tape. And I'm going to put on the bottom piece and just lining it up. And then I'm going to trim it down. And that is pretty much it. I just wanted the middle of it to have a little bit of a border, black border, and pop it up above the other sides. Now I'm just going to take my glossy accents and add some of the pretty Pink Posh clear gems. They're not sequins, they're gems. And the sentiment that's on the side there, it's not joy that makes us grateful, came from the Gina K design foil cards. So that's the sentiment at the bottom of the, what I think are daisies, the flowers that are on there. I just cut the sentiment from the top, and I'm going to use that top for the other card. So now I'm just going to continue adding my clear gems. And then it took me a while to figure out where I wanted the sentiment, but I settled on the middle because I didn't want to cover the flowers, but it looked silly on either one of the sides. It looked better to me in the middle, so that's where I put it. And then I also added some of the gems to the bottom, just a couple. I also added some white highlights to the orange flower and the yellow flower. And there's my completed card. The next project is my favorite. This one came out so good. So I'm going to use the middle-sized tag from this. It's an older Sizzix die. Any die will do, but you have to have a die for this unless you're really good at cutting out by hand fancy tags, because I'm using Yupo paper, so you can't just, use any old paper. You have to have a die to cut it out. So I'm just going to take the Yupo paper, and on both of them, I'm just going to use different inks. That red ink is an older one that I had in my stash. Didn't come in the kit. Just going to move around the red and the yellow with my straw, and then the top paper. I didn't realize until after I put it on that I was pretty good chance I was going to make mud with the orange and the green. And I had my bottle facing the wrong way, so I got more blending solution on the red and yellow Yupo paper, but it didn't seem to really bother it. So I put the orange on and then I started putting the green on and I thought, well, this is going to be an ugly brown, but it ended up being just fine. So I kind of messed with it a while and I was impatient and I started trying to put the foil paper on too early. So I had to redo it. And when I turned the camera back on, not redo it, but I had to put more alcohol on there and let it dry for a while. The color went kind of crazy. I think it doesn't like the cameras don't like the foil. So I apologize for the dark, but it does get better. Anyway, I'm just going to add the foil to both of the panels. And these are kind of the scraps that I have left over from doing all my other projects. I just took it, kept turning it, and then placing it on and putting more foil wherever I thought it would take it. And if you do your foiling too early, all you do is just lift the ink and make a mess. If you do it too late, it doesn't take the foil. So it's you kind of have to, it kind of needs to be tacky and dry, but not too dry, and tacky so that it'll actually grab the foil. So I just keep adding my foil here. And those little stamps up on the top, I'm pretty sure that I got those at Michael's years ago. And they were probably like so in the cheapy little dollar section. But so I'm not, but any fall stamps is going to work because we're going to do the lift ink technique on both of these Yupo paper panels. So any fall stamp that you want to use to lift with the alcohol ink, you can use. Those are just ones that I happen to have in my stash that I've never even touched, and I wanted to see how they worked. They actually worked pretty good. I was surprised. So I'm going to start with the pumpkin, and what I'm going to do is lift from the Yupo paper and stamp onto, that's just a regular piece of white cardstock, because you have to take it and put it onto a porous surface in order for the ink to transfer. So non-porous to porous. So I just kind of randomly placed lifted the ink from different spots with each one of these. And I'm going to be making 4 place cards with these 2 pieces of Yupo paper. So all I really need is 4 of those images, but I used all of the stamps just to see how they looked. But I only picked 4 of the images for the however many place cards you're going to make is how many of these stamps you're going to need, or how many times you want to stamp it onto the white cardstock, so that because I'm going to trim all of those out uh, to put on the tags. So now that I'm done with that, I'm just kind of speed this up a little. The color is still kind of wonky. I don't know why it does that. But this part, you just use, clean parts of the towel, pick up the ink over where you use the lift ink, and then kind of buff it out. And that brings the white of the Yupo paper from behind to the front and shows your image really well. Now I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to run them through my Big Shot. Actually, no, I'm going to fussy cut. I fussy cut out all the stamped images, and now I'm cutting down all of the sentiments. So I picked smile, hello, hi, and love you from the stamp set that came in the kit, and I trimmed them all down and fussy cut out each one of the stamped images. And then you can see here I cut each one of 4 tags using that die. And now I'm going to kind of just, they looked a little too bright, too white, I should say, for my tags. So I used some distress ink and I dulled them down a little bit. And now I'm just taking some twine and I'm going to run it through all of the tops of my tags. And this is where I'm going to be hanging on. You'll see how I use these. And each one of them is just going to get one of the stamped images that I cut out and one of the sentiments. I'm going to adhere the stamped image directly to the tag using some score tape, and then I'm going to pop up with a dimensional adhesive each one of the sentiments on each one of the tags. And this is my favorite project. This came out so good. I love the way it looks on my table. So here we have all 4 of them completed. And now I'm going to put them on. I'm going to show you, I just got some pumpkin, those little tiny pumpkins from the grocery store. They were like 50 cents a piece. And I just hang one off. I got 4 of them, 2 white ones and 2 orange ones. Hang off a tag from each one. And then they just sit in the middle of my fancy holiday plates in part of the decoration for your Thanksgiving table. And here's what it looks like sitting on the fancy plates. And there's one for each. I only have 4 places because there'll only be 4 of us this year. But however many you do is however many you would make. This is the other part of the card where I cut the sentiment off for the last card. I just colored it. I didn't run it through the with the foil. That's just the way it came with the black. I colored it with my Copic markers, just using some yellows and greens. And now I'm going to attach it to a black base right behind it. I just cut it out with a square die and then used a square die the next size up for the backing. Then I'm going to pop that up using some foam adhesive in the middle of a yellow card base that was from my stash. That didn't come in, that's not the yellow one that came in the kit. And now I'm going to take a piece of that score tape and I'm going to run it right underneath so that I can use some of the foil. I'm just going to make a strip of foil right underneath the picture. This card is super fast. So if you're looking for some ideas to use with those design foil cards, there's lots of them out there. This one is super fast, and I think it came out very, very, very pretty. So I'm just going to take some of the black cardstock, attach it to the bottom right underneath the foil, and then I'm going to trim that down. And I'm going to add my sentiment. I wanted to do happiest of birthdays from the stamp set, but it didn't fit. So thinking of you fit the best. So now I'm just trying to line it up since I'm doing it without my stamp platform. And I'm just using the clear embossing pad, and I'm going to use some white embossing powder. Heat set that, and then that is it. I don't do anything else to this card because I think it looks fabulous the way it is. So that is the 5th card that I made in this 2-part series, and now we are on to our last project. So for this one, I'm making, these are the napkins, which, excuse my napkins, they look terrible, but I haven't washed them yet, and I'm just showing you how I fold them. So this is just a regular black napkin, and I fold it twice at the bottom, and this is how I make a pocket. So you just pull it up, make the pocket, flip it over. They need to be washed and pressed. They've been sitting in storage all year, and that creates the pocket. And now I'm just going to make sleeves for each one of the 4 napkins that I'm going to be placing on my table. So I just took a piece of brown cardstock from my stash, and I'm just inking up the large flower stamp with just the clear embossing ink. So I'm not going to put any powder over it. I'm just going to leave it like that. And this is what how it's going to end up fitting on the napkin. So I'm going to cut, depending on what size napkin you use, will depend on what size you cut down your panel to. But mine were 6 inches wide, so I cut my panels down to a little under 6 inches, and then I cut the red. I made 2 red and 2 yellow, and I cut those down to be, that's 12 inches, so it's a 12-inch panel, and then I just scored it where it'll just wrap right around the napkin. And I made 4 of them, and now I'm just going to do there's a sentiment that's going to go on each one, and it says thankful for you, and I'm going to stamp that out 4 times, 1 for each napkin. Another super fast but looks so nice. I'm going to take the white embossing powder, and I'm going to heat emboss all 4 of the sentiments. Some of these projects are pretty quick, and some of them take a really long time. So it just depends on how fast you're trying to decorate your table. So I'm just going to trim them all down. And then I'm going to pop each one of them up with some dimensional foam adhesive. And it's going to go right in the center of the flowers and thankful for you. And then that's going to go, I made 4 of them, and then that's just going to go right over, I'll show you right now, the top of the napkin, the pocket part of the napkin. And then I even brought my silverware down so I could show you what it looks like with the silverware in it. And there it is. Super simple, but looks really good on the table. And I made 4 of those. So this is the completed last project. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you guys like these videos and that I will see you again with the next kit. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.